Welcome once more to Virtual Sunday, a presentation of Whatsoever You Do Incorporated. I'm Norbertine Father Tim Shilcox coming to you once more from the silence and beauty of Morgan Lake up in Florence County. And it's the 6th week of Easter. The passage from St. John's Gospel, chapter 15, it's Jesus around the Last Supper table, just ahead of his arrest and his execution. He says to them, he speaks to us through the corridors of history, there can be no greater love than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. And he goes on to call the apostles and to call you and me his friends. He has made known everything to us. And isn't it true, brothers and sisters, that as soon as these words of Jesus ring in our ears, our minds and our hearts, and even deeper in our souls, that there's a sense of joy at the thought of being a friend of Jesus, and also a sense that it's true. No greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friend. And yet, there's a part of us too, isn't there, at least for me, that thinks, well, that's not going to happen to me. I'm not going to have that kind of opportunity. I won't be crucified as Jesus was. Hopefully not literally thrown to the lions in this life either. And we tend to go our merry way, maybe spend some time thinking about the martyrs thrown to the lions, beheaded or otherwise tortured in unthinkable ways, serenely going home to God, offering everything for the sake of Jesus. Maybe if we let it get a little bit closer, we may think perhaps of our brothers and sisters who've served in the military. Memorial Day will come up at the end of the month. We think of those who've made this supreme sacrifice. Or maybe a little bit closer, we might think of carrying around an organ donor card in our wallets, just in case, so that others might have life should something terrible befall us. Or maybe we know a loved one who's made that donation of life in the event of their dying time, especially if it came up quickly and unexpectedly. But I want to suggest, brothers and sisters, it's more than that. By our baptism, each one of us are called for the love of Jesus Christ to lay down our lives for our friends, for others. Might sound cheesy, the banner from the 60s, the love in our hearts not put there to stay. Love isn't love till you give it away. But it's true. Love in action, a harsh and dreadful thing compared to love in dreams. St. John will tell us elsewhere to love in word and deed and not just to talk about it. I remember being in this part of the state about 15, 20 years ago for the wedding of a former student in Iron Mountain. And most of the groomsmen were his classmates, so I knew them all. One of them was struggling at that time, and everybody else knew it. So the groom came over to me, one of the groomsmen came over to me and said, you know, Father Tim, what's the matter with our friend? Something's wrong. He won't talk to us. You tell him. You tell him any one of us would rip off an arm for him. It was beautiful, that thought of brotherhood, that thought of whatever we can do. And yet, in many ways, what our friends need of us isn't as dramatic as ripping off an arm or stepping in front of a speeding train. It's simply to stop and give of our care and give of our time and give of our listening. Hard work it is to listen with ears and mind and heart and soul, to be attentive and patient as one might pour out their heart. This is a way of laying down our lives for our friends. And it happens in other ways, very ordinary ways, brothers and sisters. The church had a title for it. They talked about white martyrdom. You might not like me mentioning the word martyrdom. White martyrdom was without the blood, without the literal physical death, that someone would give themselves away, that someone would lay down their life for another. While this gospel passage comes up on the 6th Sunday of Easter, you've heard it perhaps much more frequently at weddings. It's bride's and groom's favorite. Love one another as I have loved you. Aw, isn't that sweet? And there can be no greater love than this, than to lay down one's life for one's friends. You who have known the experience of marriage, you who are spouses, husbands and wives, you know that in your vows you have given yourself away to each other and received the gift of each other. Spouses promise to put each other first. They still get taken care of, but not by themselves, but by the other. That trust, that deep care for another ahead of ourselves. In Christian marriage, you know it better than this old single guy up in the woods critiques. It imitates Christ. And sometimes, I suspect, not to be a smart aleck, it can feel like a crucifixion, because the other's need might be so great. Declining health, physical or emotional, perhaps problems that were never foreseen, or challenges that seem insurmountable, and yet you stay there. Those of you who are parents know as well, what it means to lay down one's life for one's friends. You give yourselves away, a kind of white martyrdom for your children. There's no sacrifice too great. No opportunity that you would let pass by to give them what they need to be well, to grow as Jesus did in age and wisdom and grace. And I'm not talking the heroic and exceptional moments here. I'm talking working extra shifts of overtime to make sure that the bills can be paid. I'm talking changing diapers for the umpteenth, the gazillionth time. I'm talking bandaging physical wounds. Being willing to be the bad cop in consistent discipline that sets limits, that let children know they're loved. I'm talking about continuing to love when a child has let you down, got arrested, got caught with drugs. When a child comes to you and says, "Mom and Dad, I'm pregnant. Help me." Martyrdom indeed, laying down one's life for those we love. Sooner or later, our life, like sand through the hourglass, as the cheesy soap opera guy says, so the days of our lives, sooner or later it'll all pass away. But we as Christians, today and every day of our life, we have the opportunity to lay our lives down for the love of Christ and the love of others, specific others around us, to give ourselves away as Christ made a sacrifice, made an offering of himself to the Almighty and to us, rather than letting our lives pass away. The gospel this weekend invites us to be deliberate. To whom have you already given your life? A spouse, a child, an enduring friendship, maybe part of one of those bands of brothers or sisters, lifelong friendships started in high school and continuing despite the busyness, the craziness. Who would you drop everything to help, to listen, to give a pint of blood? Another way to think of it, perhaps, would be to look at the story of our lives. I was thinking of it up here in the quiet. I gave my 30s to Holy Cross and Bay Settlement. My first time as a pastor, I loved it out there. Loved the people and the opportunities. So grateful for their patience with me as a young, inexperienced guy. Rolling with some of the punches, walking through some of the mistakes that I made, that others made. For better or for worse, they got my 30s. And Lourdes my 40s. The Abbey, I belong to the brothers, to the Church of St. Norbert Abbey. What about for you? To whom do you belong? Who's received the gift of your 20s or 30s or 40s? Your creativity, your talents and skills, your time, your care. This is the no greater love than anything else that Jesus teaches in today's gospel. Whenever we put another first and for the love of Christ, whenever we think of another ahead of ourselves and give whatever we have to give in one fell swoop and one dramatic sacrifice, or little by little by little, a few minutes or an hour, a day or a decade or a lifetime, for the sake of others and for the love of Jesus. There can be no greater love than this. And on this Easter Sunday, we reflect that this great love cannot be killed even by death. Praise God for that. And happy Easter, brothers and sisters.